welcome back to my channel. Today I will be sharing a recipe for pho. For those who are not familiar with pho is the most popular Vietnamese beef noodle soup in the world. It is so delicious and it is one of our family's favorites, especially my husband. He has to go to the Vietnamese restaurant at least once a week to get his bowl of pho. So you guys know I had to learn to make this, and I will be sharing my recipe with you guys. So to get started, here I have some beef neck bones, marrow bones, I have oxtail and chuck roast beef. I also will be using some shallots, onions, ginger. I have allspice, some cloves, star anise. I have fennel seeds, coriander seeds, some rock sugar. I have cinnamon sticks and some black cardamom. I don't even know how to pronounce this. I have salt, fish sauce, and some mushroom seasoning. Now, if you're not familiar with mushroom seasoning, it is a game changer and it wakes the flavors up. It's something like MSG, but the natural version of it. So you know it's very delicious. And this is what the packaging looks like. It can be found at any Asian store or market. And that's it. Let's jump right into the recipe. So the first thing you want to do is roast the veggies. And you want to preheat your oven and place this under the broiler for about 5 to 10 minutes. After about 10 minutes, this is how they are looking. Now this is just to bring out the sweetness in them. We will set this aside until we are ready for it later. Next, you want to toast the spices in a frying pan. We will toast them until they become nice and fragrant and just a little bit of color on them. You don't want them to burn. Just as soon as they look like this, we will now remove it from the heat and set aside. Next, you want to place your spices in one of these. I don't even know what this thing is called, but you want to place it in either one of these, or you can use a spice bag. You could also use a piece of cheesecloth to wrap the spices in. And the reason for doing this is because we will be removing the spices at one point in the recipe. We will not be cooking them like all the way through. So you want to place them in something like this where they are contained so that you could easily remove it from the pot when you are ready. Now moving on to the most important part of the recipe, it is making the broth. The broth is super important because it is what really makes the dish. So we will parboil the beef for about 20 minutes, then I'll show you guys the next step. So the reason for parboiling the beef for 20 minutes first is because we don't want the impurities that's settling at the top there inside of our broth. You want a nice clear broth. So we will drain that off. We will wash the meat, wash the pot, and fill it back up with clean water and return it to the stove. So now we have a clean pot of water with our meat. We'll go ahead and start adding, the rest of our ingredients. We'll add the salt, the fish sauce, our rock sugar. We'll add our mushroom seasoning. Now, if you can't find mushroom seasoning and you don't have a problem using MSG, you can just add a little bit of MSG in the pot, To me, without the mushroom seasoning or a little MSG, the broth is just flat. That's in my opinion. But just go with whatever you prefer. We'll add our onions, shallots, or ginger, and then we'll add the spices here. I had a little problem with the spices because the stuff will not shut. And what I did was I just placed the spices inside of a piece of cheesecloth. I wrap it up in a cheesecloth and I place it in the pot, because I don't want those spices floating around in the soup. I will remove it later on in about 3 hours time. So we'll let this come up to a boil, and what we'll do is turn the heat down to low. You don't want to boil this on heavy heat at all because your broth will become cloudy and you don't want that. So you want to keep checking this occasionally and you will see a little scum floating up there. It's not completely gone because we parboiled it. So you have to keep removing it until eventually your broth is clear. We will let this continue to simmer. Now usually this broth is cooked for 10 plus hours or overnight. They usually simmer it on really low heat, but I will not be cooking it that long. I'll cook it for probably 4 or 6 hours. So 3 hours in, we will now remove the chuck roast beef and the spice bag. Now you don't want the spices cooking all the way through for the whole process because you don't want the spices to be too overpowering in the broth. You want a nice subtle spice flavor in there, but not too overpowering. And once your beef becomes nice and tender, you want to remove it because you don't want it to disintegrate inside of the broth. And we will also come back in 30 minutes and remove the oxtail. We will allow this to cook for 3 more hours. And after 6 hours, I will now stop the cooking process. As you can see, the broth has evaporated a whole lot and it is super flavorful and just delicious. Even though we did not cook it for 10 plus hours or overnight, the broth is still amazing. Now we will strain this. You want to use a cheesecloth to strain your broth because you want it to be super clear and you don't want, all those beef bits and onion stuff and all that inside of your broth. You want it nice and clear. So I would advise to use a cheesecloth instead of a regular strainer. So at this point, you want to go ahead and chop your chuck roast beef, all of your cooked beef. You want to make them smaller so that they're easier to eat and digest. So we'll chop them up into smaller pieces and set them aside. Now let's take a look at our toppings. These are traditionally used when eating pho. I have some thinly sliced raw ribeye steak, and I have here some Thai basil. I have bean sprouts, some chili peppers and serrano peppers. I'll be using some limes. I have cilantro, green onions, and yellow onions. Here are the noodles I'll be using, and you can just follow the instructions on the package to, cook your noodles. I know everyone can cook noodles, so I don't have to make the video longer by showing you guys that part. So now let's assemble our pho. First, we will add our noodles, and you can add as much or as little as you like, guys. It's no rules to this. So we'll add our noodles, then we'll add our cooked beef. We'll also add some of that raw beef. And what happens is you want to go and put your broth back onto the stove right now and turn your heat up to high and bring that broth up to a boil. Boil it until it's scorching hot. And that broth is what cooks the raw beef. It cooks it to like a medium rare, or it can be cooked to a well done. You just pour enough broth on there and your beef will be cooked well done. So that broth is what cooks the thinly sliced beef. And once we've added our toppings and we've added the broth, that's it. That's how easy it is to make this. And here you have it, guys, my take on a delicious pho. Now, if you have never tried pho before, my advice is go down to your local Vietnamese restaurant and order you a bowl of pho. So when you actually make it at home, you'll know what it's supposed to taste like. Now, another thing that goes well with pho is some Hoisin sauce and Sriracha hot sauce. Personally, for me, I don't like to add anything to my pho because, the broth is so rich and flavorful. I feel like the sauces spoil the taste. So I like to keep it super simple. But yeah, this is it. And I hope you guys give the recipe a try. If you enjoy my video, please give it a thumbs up, share it, leave a comment down below, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button for me. I will be leaving all my ingredients and measurements down in the description box, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Have a good day and enjoy.